This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Sherapy with Sherry. And it's been a long time, Sherry.
I know it's been a while. I always appreciate, Karen, when you roust me up and say, "Hey, we haven't done a podcast for a while." Thanks for joining us today on Sherapy, Real Therapy with Sherry and Mattenstein. I'm a psychotherapist, author of 4 books, and I am a person who was thrilled to get her 2 Moderna vaccines last winter. But afterwards, I found it very hard to resume some semblance of a normal life. That brings me to the subject of today's podcast, quarantining in my head, feeling unsafe after being vaccinated too, probably. And I'm obviously not alone in having a real tough time dealing with this stressful, scary time. And medical professionals have coined the label post-pandemic stress disorder to describe a form of COVID-induced PTSD that impacts literally millions of people. The World Health Organization says PPSD has caused mass trauma on a scale that is larger than the psychological wounds impacted by World War II. And that might sound like an exaggeration, worse induced trauma than after World War II, but let's factor in confusion over the medical guidelines, the political as well as personal rifts between family and friends, months of terror at leaving your house, plus the discomfort of being stuck in your house. And now we're looking at booster shots to extend the efficacy of the vaccine. So it's not really that shocking that even if it looked like or still looks like we are inching our way towards some kind of detente with COVID. And let me just say, fuck you, Delta variants. It's really hard to give up the patterns that got us through the worst of the pandemic. In my case, I was diagnosed with breast cancer right around the time COVID started rampaging through New York City. I went through treatment during lockdown, and all of that made me really anxious. So while I was thrilled to get my second vaccine last February, I still found it hard to start going about, even just walking outside. Basically, I didn't feel ready. It's been a step by step process. Seeing my sister face to face was really great, but it was scary. And then, she hugged me and I felt even a little more scared, but and she's been vaccinated too. But everything has just been really hard to do. I mean, I feel fortunate that none of the therapy patients that I used to see face to face and now have virtual sessions with, none of them have expressed an interest in resuming face to face sessions because I'm still not ready. And now we're all scared anew because of Delta variant and Lambda. And sorry to mention yet a new wrinkle about Lambda, but that's another thing that we're worried about. So my first guest, he's the one who inspired this show, is Neil Kramer. He's a photographer and a friend who has been documenting his experience of holding up with his 86-year-old mother and his ex-wife, Sylvia, in a 2-bedroom apartment in Flushing, Queens. And he's been doing this photo series called Quarantining in Queens that has won numerous plaudits around the world, including a hilarious appearance by Neil, his mother, and his ex-wife Sylvia on the Today Show. So check out neilkramerphotography.com, NeilKramer photography.com. And I was a big fan of your work even before quarantining in Queens. I mean, you took my most recent headshot in December 2019, and that was right before the world changed, essentially. So Thanks so much for coming on, Neil.
Oh, thank you.
And
Uh,
I know, like, you're continuing with quarantining in Queens, even though all three of you are vaccinated. You're
on
all
day
you're all,
100 and 523.
wow.
Yeah, which is sort of a little bit of a depressing fact.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of feels like it's easier it was easier for the Beatles to split up than the three of you guys. So, when you first started the project, you went for humor. It was like there was a photo of the three of you in the vaccine. In the bathtub, you were taking a bubble bath, and
Yes.
Sylvia was shaving her legs, and your mother was kind of hovering, holding her phone. But in the last several months, especially after you guys got the vaccine, it seems like your series is taking on so much more depth in pathos, as you're struggling to come to some kind of terms with our transitional existence. I mean, you've been getting out a bit. You recently went to a photo exhibition. I think Sylvia went to Atlantic City or somewhere. So, how would you describe what this time has been like for you?
Well, even though it's sort of an art project in a way, it's my life, and I think everyone has been going through the same experience of, shutting down, reopening. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm here is because I think maybe like a month or two ago, I wrote something where I brought up the term
Yes,
quarantining in your mind.
quarantining in Queens was your
Right. Well,
brilliant term that gave me the idea for
well,
doing
I'm
stuff.
not. The only reason I mention it is
No,
like
it's true.
it just shows
Yeah.
how fast the news changes, because it's already old statement. Because when I was writing about it, I was saying that like I'm feeling a little bit like the quarantine is more in my mind than in reality.
Yeah.
And now, like a month and a half later, it's like we're all talking about. I already with my mother, we're already discussed. Should she be going shopping as much? I mean, it's not like we're going back to March of 2020, but it's not. I think this summer was a little bit of a reprieve. We started going out. We all got vaccinated several months ago. We began to feel comfortable, and now, maybe the quarantining in the mind was actually, I was feeling a little guilty about it. Like, maybe I'm a little paranoid, because so many of my friends were like starting to go out to eat and stuff like that, and we were like the last people to do it. And finally, we did start going out to eat outside. We actually ate at a diner once inside, covering our masks every time the waiter came up. And almost like part of me wants to say, I told you so. It's not embarrassing anymore to say like you're worrying again. There was like a certain 3-month period where you almost were thinking that you were overcompensating for everything, and that but it's still there still is a lot of this in my, talking about the quarantining in your mind. I think at this point there is a risk, a health physical risk, but you're right, so much of it is like mental now.
Right.
We're all tired. It's like, I talk to friends, I'm not even talking about people who are anti-vaxxers or won't wear masks, but just friends who I consider, intelligent people, who are like, you know what, it's like, it'll be worse if I keep on isolating,
Right.
In New York City, it's going to be on CNN. There's a big concert in Central Park tomorrow night, right? With Springsteen, like tons of people. And a friend of mine got tickets and asked me if I wanted to go. I was like, and chances are it'll be fine, but it's outside. I saw you even went to a Met game, right?
Right.
And it's like that these little things all of a sudden become big issues, and you sort of feel, is this real, or is this just me being overly cautious? And there is no answer. You know.
No, I mean, I think everybody has to come to some terms that make sense for them, except this has been such a difficult thing for all of us to deal with. And this happened on time. It's not like people were blank slates. A lot of
Right.
people already had anxiety issues, depression
Yes.
issues, and just issues with various stressors in their lives, their living situations, whatever. And then this came on top of it.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
even, it's even
I mean,
more.
I mean, clearly this is exasperating, whatever, you know, if you were like hypochondriac before, this is like a work, you know, but if you were like reckless, that, you know, everyone has their own personalities. But I think we're all in each other's face. You know, we all want like some sort of black and white rules, and we're never going to get it. So I have my mother here. So I have, you know, if I was living on my own, I might be a little, I might go to the concert.
Right.
But, you know, probably I'm saying that I probably wouldn't, because I am a little bit of a hypochondriac.
Right.
But, you know, I use my mother as an excuse, like I don't want to get her sick. But, you know, it's a complicated time. And, you know, and like you're saying, I think it is affecting our mental health as much as, and some of my friends are sort of pushing me to like go out more, because you know, like what is more important, your mental health or your physical health? I mean, not that there is any choice you have, but
I mean, the two are tied together. And yeah,
right.
we do want to, you don't want to let our fears overwhelm and consume, but you don't want, it's like which end of the pendulum, and there's
Right.
no one end of the pendulum to be on. And
Right. So am I missing out not going to this concert on Saturday? I mean, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, it might have been more, you know, healthy to have gone.
When I first heard that they were going to have this huge kind of New York is coming back,
Right.
Central Park, I was like,
Right.
I thought of going even, you know, and then I thought, I'll watch it on CNN. But
right.
To help us all deal with this, my next guest, Carrie Malawista, and I hope I'm saying that right, and please correct me if I'm not. But she's a writer and a psychoanalyst in Maryland, and she's co-chair of New Directions in Writing. She's a board member at the Washington-Baltimore Center for Psychoanalysis, and she's a founder of the recent project, which is wonderful, thingstheycarryproject.org, which is a product of our times, essentially. It's all about what we're talking about. It offers free virtual writing workshops for healthcare workers and frontline responders to help them process traumatic memories. And I'm a part of that. There are these small workshops. It's a series of 3 workshops with 5 or 6 different participants, and the people who are giving each workshop is a writer and a psychotherapist. And I'm working with David Royal, who's an editor at the Washington Post, and he's wonderful. But thank you, Carrie. I'm really thrilled to volunteer for it. And I also wanted to mention, you've done a lot of freelancing yourself. You have a novel coming out next September, Meet the Moon. So thanks, Carrie. I think you have to unmute your mic.
I do have to unmute, but I've lost the picture. So I don't know where it went. It disappeared.
Oh.
So anyway, I was able to unmute though. So
okay.
Yes, thanks for having me, Sherry. Yeah, you were saying I had started the Things They Carry project back in March of this year, because it was the year anniversary since the pandemic started. And I had patients who were describing that it was almost as things slowed down, they had gotten the vaccine, that they started to recognize how traumatized they felt.
Right.
And really a lot of grief. And they so one ER doctor was saying he didn't know what to do with it all. So I suggested, what about trying to write it down? Because I'm a writer also. And so he said, well, I don't write. And I said, well, just putting down your thoughts. And he came back the next week and said how helpful it was to him. And then I had another patient do it. So I put out word to New Directions that I'd like to start this project. And I was amazed, within a week or so, I had 120 people. So I set up 60 pairs of writers and therapists to lead these groups. And we've had now, I guess, 60 workshops. They're each a series of 3, and over 400 people.
David and I are going to do an alumni group because we did our initial workshops I think it was in June. And so we're sort of getting back with the old gang, and we're going to do another 3 in September with them.
Which is great. Yeah, a lot of people are doing alumni ones now because, you don't know if something will take off, but it's been so touching to hear the impact it's had and how important it's been for people to meet with other people all over the country. We've even had some from Argentina and England in one of the groups. And what's great is, there's been nurses, hospice workers, ER doctors, people of every race and age, all in groups. But the one thing they share is just this experience this past year. And it's been very moving. And I think the idea that creating a narrative, it's, I guess, like Neil is doing in his photographs too, it's creating a story or a narrative visually. And this is a way in words to what people have experienced. And that is healing. And hopefully will build some resilience.
And you don't have to be a healthcare worker or a frontline worker to not be able to get a lot of help from doing that. Just writing something,
Writing,
almost like
right?
Because it's not about, oh, I'm trying to write and share it and get it published. It's just about, we give prompts, and then people write for like 5, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, and then we share it. And it's just about gradually, we start out with very non-traumatizing prompts, because you don't want to go to the deep, scary, tough places right away. And then as people get comfortable with each other and with kind of plumbing their depths, so to speak, it's just a really healing experience. So, so Carrie, it might be something that can help those who are not just, as we said, in the trenches of it.
Right. Yeah, no, I think writing, and as you said, we're not in these groups, we're not talking about, how to make a better sentence or write better. It's just about expressing and putting words to something that's ineffable at first, but can you find a way? And the more specific you can be, I think the more helpful it is. But that can be useful for anyone in any kind of grief situation or any situation. Right. The idea of finding the words for it.
And there's been so much loss. People in our lives, livelihoods, just even a certainty in things that we used to take for granted, like, oh, I can just go around my block and walk my dog. I can go to the grocery store, and all of a sudden, everything started feeling like you're stepping into quicksand, so
right.
How do you help patients through all this? And, two-part question, and
right.
Self, because healer.
Well, yeah. I think there's nothing more traumatizing than not knowing, what's to come. And even now with the Delta, it's even more not knowing. So my practice is full, and everyone I know is full. It's terrible. Even we can't find therapists for all the people contacting. And I see a lot of kids and adolescents also, and they are suffering. So, besides the writing, I do think having someone to talk to, the therapy helps. But I think finding some meaning, some creative outlet, again, like Neil does with his photography. And I don't mean creative like it has to be something great, but just something, you heard people baking bread, all this bread baking, but finding something that gives meaning is what I think of, because you have to be able to see a future in whatever way you can. If there's no future, then there's just depression and hopelessness. And so we have to think there's a way through, and that there's something important or meaningful that we can be doing for ourselves. But what that means for each patient, differs a lot.
I mean, I always go back for myself to the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. My parents were
Yeah.
Holocaust survivors, and there are just things that if we strive to know why they happened or just get stuck in anger, it's not going to help ultimately. I think it's about at some point you let go and you
Mhm.
just breathe and you just say, okay, let me just take this as I take it. And, for me and for my patients as well, ultimately it's about, I can't make sense of why this happened. What, the meaning, what can I bring to myself? Like when I got, breast cancer at the beginning of the pandemic, and like, what the hell?
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
But,
A double whammy. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it happened. So
Yeah.
just at
Right.
some point, you have
Yeah.
to just go with it. And it's okay to have all kinds of feelings. I think people still
Right.
get upset when they feel angry. People get upset if they fantasize about just doing something that they would never do. I'm like, don't try to like edit your feelings. They're feelings. There's a difference between feeling and an,
Mhm.
if you're fantasizing, about, hitting your husband over the head with a vase, it's not the same thing as actually doing it. So what can
Right.
you do to get through the feelings
Right.
of, hitting the person who you love but you're so sick of being quarantined with over the head with a vase? How do you express it and communicate? And we're back to words.
Right.
I think we're back to words. Yeah.
Well, and I think, yeah, or again, finding something. When the pandemic first struck, my husband and I were going for a walk, and there's a little walking bridge, and on the ground I saw a little pom-pom from a child's hat. And immediately to me, 2 weeks earlier it wouldn't have looked, but it looked like the virus, the little pandemic virus. So I tied it up with yarn on the bridge, just symbolically. And then the next day when we walked, someone had tied another thing that looked like the virus. And over the months, every day I would walk, and it gave me such hope and such pleasure every day to go walk and see what was added to my bridge, as I thought of it. And I would take a picture, and I watched it grow and fill the bridge. And these were people I never met, but somehow we connected by what we were doing in this art bridge. And, a little thing like that gave me great comfort and hope.
I want to introduce my next guest now, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. Amy Ferris is a screenwriter and an author. And if you haven't read her memoir, Marrying George Clooney, Confessions from a Midlife Crisis, What's Wrong with You? Go get it, is all I can say. And she's co-director of the Story Summit Writers School. And she's the one who got me involved with doing the podcast here with Karen Hale at New Cleveland Radio Network. So Amy, it's always wonderful to get your perspective. So how are you weathering all this?
How am I weathering all of this? I just actually posted this. Ken and I went away last week for literally 18 hours. We went to see friends, Blair, who's moving from upstate to Los Angeles. And we stayed in a hotel that we always stay at. And my husband and I are vaccinated, and he's been taking amazing care because, as Sherry knows, he had heart surgery a year ago. And, it's like, we've just been unbelievably cautious. And I also happen to live in a community that is very much anti-vaxxers. So it's a double whammy. It's kind of, but anyway, we went to this hotel that we always go to, and they made sure that, we were vaccinated and that we were going to wear masks, and they closed down their restaurant. And I made an appointment for a massage. And Ken, we both made, right. And because I hadn't had a massage in forever. And then 4 days later, we were gone on Friday morning. And on Monday morning, we got a phone call that the massage therapist had tested positive for COVID.
Oh.
And everything that I could, it was like all of my anger and I asked the person who called, I said, was she vaccinated? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, okay, here's something. You wanted us to be vaccinated. You want all your guests to be vaccinated. You want us to show the cards when we were vaccinated. You want us to wear masks. And it just spinned me into such a feeling of humanity is spinning out of control. To not care about another, it's like, and I'm going to be a little pissed off right now. When I see a sign that says "My body, my choice" about masking, it makes me sick that these are the very same people who say that women who have an abortion are murderers. They're not, these are pro-lifers who walk around and they think that their freedom is being taken from them. And the truth is, all we're asking for is for them to respect our lives. So for me, there's so much hypocrisy and so much, for Ken and I, our doctor, made sure that we had the PCR test, not a rapid test, because of his health issues and immune, issues. So we had to wait. It's like we went from feeling not that life was going back to normal, because I hope it never goes back to normal because normal didn't work, but that there was a way that we were going back to being able to be with friends or seeing people, or at least being able to have some semblance of a feeling that, yes, we were vaccinated. Yes, we've taken care of ourselves. Yes, we want our neighbors to be safe. Yes, we want children to wear masks and when they go back to school. And so it triggered so much for me. It triggered this feeling of how we don't care about each other enough. How those of us who have been vaccinated, and then and my doctor said that she works in a hospital on weekends. She's a physician in our local area, but on the weekend she works at a hospital. And she said 7 people came in with COVID who had not been vaccinated. And she said she and all the doctors and nurses are risking their lives for people who don't care enough about the next person. And I think that's something that we need to talk about. I think it's, and I wrote it today, if fetuses were mandated to wear a mask, this wouldn't be an issue. It's like, I'm not joking. It's like, if this were like, oh, every fetus needs to wear a mask, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But it's sad and it's scary. And the fact that, we went away, we hadn't been away in forever. And a stranger who gave me a massage was tested positive for COVID. And so that's a ripple effect. The 8 or 10 or 12 people that she massaged that day or within a 2-day period, all of those people got phone calls. I would imagine every one of them was scared and freaking out and worried. And what if one of those people got tested positive? It's also, I think about businesses. If somebody got tested positive because of that one woman, not because of her being tested positive, that hotel could close. It could, the county could make sure that it goes, you know, that it closes and doesn't open for another 8 months or something. I don't know. But the ripple effect of selfishness is amazing to me. It's amazing.
Yeah,
So it must mean, you know, it's like,
I'm glad you and Ken are okay, or
oh,
what?
we are okay. But it also really showed me, you know, that there's so many people who don't believe that COVID is real, who really walk around thinking it's a hoax, who feel that it's just like the flu or a cold. No, it isn't. It isn't like the flu or a cold. And people are dying. And it just shows me that, you know, there's so much selfishness, so much selfishness. And this whole thing might, you know, you're taking away my freedom. You know, fuck you, man. You know, really, fuck you. You're taking away my freedom. Nah, you're not taking away my freedom. You're just being an asshole and disrespectful. And it's really sad to me.
No, it is. It's so sad. And, you know, we talk about, like, again, meaning. What meaning can we take, or what lesson, or what can we all do? And to me, it's really about, my wish is that we would actually find humanity in human beings, and we would learn how to take care of one another, because we are all interconnected. We literally, you can't breathe without impacting the other person. So how are we not interconnected?
You know, it's the religious right, it's the fanatics, it's the people who have politicized this, right? It's, you know, it's a virus and it's contagious. And, you know, we took such strides for so long to be careful, and, you know, and now with the Delta variant, and, you know, we need to really care more about each other. And I do feel angry at friends of mine who refuse to get vaccinated. I do. I think, what is this about? Is it that you feel that, you know, you're just you've always been an anti-vaxxer, and this is different. This is very different.
So, I mean, I want to open this up to, you know, everyone now. Yeah, I mean, because no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, and the anger and the helplessness that we feel toward the people who are not doing what they really should be doing, so that we can take care of each other. Just it impacts our emotional condition, which then rebounds again, impacting our physical condition. So where do we go? What do we do?
When I'm listening, it's sort of, Amy used the word trigger. I'm actually having a little bit of a trigger just hearing everyone talk. And I'm thinking it's because for the first time in my life, I don't like something about myself that's been triggered almost, starting with Trump and then also with the pandemic, where, I can't just blame it on Trump. It's just something, I don't trust people. I almost wish it was, I could put it all on, the religious right or whatever, but and I live in an apartment building. Part of what I talk about in my projects, I live in an apartment building in Queens, like Sherry, and I'm always sometimes find, I have a lot of friends and readers who live like in other places, who like didn't quite understand the fact that going on the elevator became like an area of tension. Seeing your neighbors and, not really trusting them, and rightfully so. And yeah, I'm sure I'm losing the train of thought, but it was like, I actually even like both both Amy and Terry when we were talking. It was like, normally I you know, I would want to hug you and like have like I know, I mean, kind of, but inside I almost felt myself like I wanting to argue with you in some ways. Like there's like a built-in frustration where like you don't even want to hear anyone else, because everyone's had such a different experience, and you always feel like, you know, there is no we here. It's all like it's almost like a Mad Max world where you feel like, you know, I mean, it's the inequality of everything. You know, some people get cancer, some didn't. Some people did really well during the pandemic. I have friends who like are selling their houses for twice as much as that was before. And it was like, normally I wouldn't sort of like be bothered by that, but all of a sudden it's like, it just like has unleashed sort of like, we're not in this together anymore. And I really dislike that about myself.
You know, Neil, as you're talking, it makes me think about a couple of things, which is, you know, I think the pandemic, I think this period of time, when you talk about friends who are selling their houses, you know, it's also, there's such an inequality that has been illuminated during this time. And it's really shocking to me. And I mean, I have friends on one side of the scale who just bought a massive new house for millions of dollars. And then I have a friend who's, you know, being evicted, you know, it's, and has nowhere to go, you know, so it's, and these are smart, wonderful, good human beings who've both got caught up in something. And I just think that everyone is going through something at this moment that is their Achilles heel. You know, and I've learned something this past year, and I've learned that death is not just a human being dying. It's the death of a job. It's the death of a house. It's the death of a career. It's the death of your bank account. You know, it's, people are really suffering. And many people are suffering because other people are incredibly selfish. You know, and we need to take better care of each other. We do, you know, and also the people that my heart goes out to are caretakers right now, you know, who are struggling taking care of loved ones as best they can. And, you know, I'm astonished at the level of unkind that has manifested. You know, I was listening to the school board meeting last night. I'm not a parent, but I was listening online because, you know, we live in a district where they don't care. Their kids don't have to wear masks. They want their kids back at school. The school board they refuse to have any kind of mask mandate. To them, it's like they literally want their kids playing and exchanging crayons. They want their children to be able to see each other's faces, you know, but it's okay to carry a gun in school. It's, you know, this is the stuff that
yeah. And I have some of those same feelings about this divide, and the same feelings you have. But as Neil says, it does worry me about the split we have in this country, because I do know some people who are immigrants who weren't getting vaccinated because they're fearful that they're going to be deported, or some African-American friends who know. So I try to think of that they're not just bad people always who aren't getting vaccinated, even though I'm so angry about it also, but that there's so many motivations. And if there's a way we cannot divide so far, you know, even though I feel such a divide, you know, but how to keep in mind, how do we bridge this in a sense?
And the only way to do that is to find our commonalities and first find a place of just being able to talk to one another. I mean, I did probably around 6, 7 months ago, I did a Zoom for, this was right around the time, I think when Biden was elected is actually when I wound up doing this, and it was three of the participants were female Republicans and three were
Right.
female Democrats. And the whole idea of it was not to start out, oh, fucked up person and blah, 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 but to find the places of agreement and connect, because that's an ongoing process for humanity, because you can't just come in and say, well, you're all wrong and you're screwed up and this is what you should be doing. Everybody has a point of view, whether no matter how we feel about the other person's point of view. In this instance, we find it's particularly just infuriating, exasperating, sorrowful, all of that, because your point of view is affecting my life. So what do we do with that? And it still has to be about, like I said, I go on my Facebook feed, and when I see the making fun of the other side, it doesn't get us anywhere. It really doesn't.
I think that, and I agree with you, making fun of the other side is, I have friends who are Democrats and they won't get vaxxed. It's not like it's the other side. It's that they have a belief system, and you cannot chip away at that belief system. We have friends, their entire family, including them, their grandkids, their children, they all had COVID and they refuse to get vaccinated. But they'll throw big parties now because COVID was just like a cold and they're over it. But, they're putting you at risk. That's where the selfishness comes into me. It's like, okay, you had COVID and my heart goes out to you. And they can tell me, well, it was just like a cold or it was just like a flu, but it isn't. It isn't like a cold or a flu. You don't have to be on a ventilator when you have a cold. And I guess for me, what I'm learning is that the people, and they're not just Republicans, Sherry. I mean, they're not just Trumpers. There's a fundamental difference.
That was just my Zoom.
No, I know that. And I know you well enough to know that. It's just that there's a fundamental difference it's almost like there's a difference between being righteous and being right. It's like righteous has a little bit more, sexiness to it. It's like, I'm gonna, and being right is no one's gonna tell me ever, and I think it's scary that we're at a place where the Delta variant, that this has come back, that people are dying, that hospitals are full, that children are going back to school, the anxiety of wanting life to go back to normal. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe we should have said, well, normal really didn't work. Maybe we should go forward with something else. Going back to normal is obviously killing us.
Sometimes I think about, getting on the ark to do everything, and then like everything else just crash and burn. But we're here, and it feels apocalyptic in a lot of ways. But we can only do what we could do, but we all need to do something. We all need to make efforts. We all need to reach out, because if you just get that feeling of, well, I'm just one person and I'm just going to go back to bed, because I just
One
can't.
person can change the world.
Yeah.
One person can also ruin lives. So it's the same thing. All you need is one person to run into a school with a gun, and but all you need is one person to stand up and say, I'm going to make this better. You know, it does. It takes one person. And I think if we all have that attitude and that spirit and be that one person, not wait for that one person, I think then we'll have, you know, we can make a very big difference. And we may not be able to affect everybody's lives that way. And there are people who will absolutely not get vaccinated. And I, for one, do not wish them death. I hate when people write, you know, well, I hope they, you know, it's like, I don't want them to die. I just want them to become smarter or more compassionate, or just stay home and watch TV, you know, watch Netflix.
I'm also thinking, you know, we all have to take more responsibility for this mess, including myself and ourselves, because, you know, starting when I found out like half the country was still voting for Donald Trump after all, you know, after all those years, and that half the country, you know, doesn't believe in science. You begin to think like we sort of have failed as a country, you know, all of us, in, you know, in educating ourselves, or just becoming, you know, like so much of this country doesn't work anymore. And you know, I'm not a very political person, but it's like almost, you know, feel like, you know, my last thing I want to say is like, we need to do something, you know, there has to be some sort of change that goes on. I don't even know what it is, because it doesn't even feel like we're one country anymore. And that's all of our faults.
I got it. And I agree with you. God.
Yeah.
Sherry, you want to ask another question?
That's why
Harry, you want to ask a question or start a dialogue?
but that's why I do think it's important also when we're talking about all this to take care of ourselves, to nurture ourselves. Don't forget yourself. It's, you know, I was doing some sessions with a patient earlier who, you know, since she doesn't go into the office, I mean, she stopped taking showers. You know, people don't come over, so she doesn't really clean her apartment, you know, and we have to keep doing these things, because if you don't take it, you know, there's that old cliche, but cliches are born in truth. If you're on a plane with your child and the plane, you know, you have to put the mask on yourself before you put it on your child. So we have to do things to refresh ourselves before you go back into battle, you know. And when we think of it as battle, that's not helpful either, because we're all people. And as I, you know, just said a few minutes earlier, not that I have any answers, but that literally our breath can kill the other.
Yes.
I just think that's an amazing thing. So what does that mean? What does that say? How do we take that and not share air that infects one another, but that brings one another health? Ultimately should just be the goal.
Well, Sherry, I have to thank you for bringing this podcast about today. We need to keep talking about this, and we've been doing this on several other podcasts. We can't stop talking, but we also have to listen. And I have to say that something that you and Amy have really made me see in the last couple of years. You know, my voice, it's not about my voice. It's about all of your voices. It's about all of us coming together, whether I agree with you or not, but I don't have the final word. And once we realize that it's not just about us, but it's about all of us, I think that's when we'll see some changes. And this took a lot on you, I know, to put this together, and I appreciate that.
And no, and thank you, Karen. And I'm always happy when you know, sort of rouse me and say, it's been a while since you've done a podcast. But it really is about just reminding ourselves that we are all connected, every human being, every living thing, all around the globe. We're connected.
Yep.
It doesn't matter that we have different belief systems or, you know, any of that. I mean, before I was a therapist, my first career was as a journalist. And, you know, some of my favorite kinds of stories were literally traveling around the globe and just seeing different ways that people lived. I mean, I remember I went to Ghana. I was doing a story on, literally, this is called witches' camps. You know, the elderly women in these really rural, remote villages. If they're the male figure in their lives, be it a husband or a son, died, the rest of the villagers would want their home, and they would say, "You're a witch," and stone the woman, and she would just, you know, have to basically flee for her life and wind up in literally what was called like a witch's camp. There were a couple of warlock camps also, but I mean, in the course of doing that story, and I also went to and I met with some of the political leaders too. And it really is about, when it's all really about, if you don't have the basics of life, if you don't have a safe place to live, if you don't have enough food, if you don't have all these things that, you know, we in our lives here take for granted, you are so much more susceptible to being influenced by, you know, crazy shit, evil shit, you know. So it really is about that in the end, to me. We just have to be able to connect. I mean, one by one, you know, on that damned arc. You know, it really is about that. I think. Do I know how to start doing that? This is well above my pay grade. But you know, as Amy mentioned before, it's not about hating people who don't believe the way we do. And unfortunately, now people who don't believe in this way can, you know, literally risk our lives. But it really is about that understanding. You're a human being too. You know, because a lot of what they feel, you know, and I am saying us and they, and there you go with all of that, is that you're just going to make fun of me. You're just going to think I'm a total idiot. You don't believe that anything that I say or feel has validity. And therefore, I have my back up against you, you know, and I'm not going to listen or hear anything that you say. So that's to me why we keep reaching these stalemates. And these stalemates are getting more and more dangerous.
Sorry, I'm muted. I want to add something, which just as you were talking, Sherry, what came up for me too was, you know, we've also, in a very weird, those of us who are vaccinated, those of us who wear masks, those of us who, we have become the other also. You know, it's so, so divided in so many ways, in so many ways. And the truth is, we're so, you know, we're so very much alike. You know, I don't know anyone who doesn't experience fear or worry. I don't know anyone who doesn't, you know, it's like if you stripped away our external, our skin, you know, we'd all have the same hearts and fears and worries and doubts and you know, tremble at certain things. It's profound to me that we've gotten to where we are. And it's over a pandemic, it's over a health crisis. You know, it's kind of like we've gone from Black Lives Matter to, oh, no, all lives matter, to blue lives matter to blue lives don't matter to, blue lives really fucking matter to nobody's life matters to only my life matters. And if you wear a mask, fuck you. It's,
And if you don't wear a mask, fuck you.
yes. And I want, humanity needs to come together. We are all we have. We are all we have. Everything is based on relationships. Everything we do is based on a relationship, whether it's a relationship to ourselves, to another human, to our writing, the relationship to the pen we use,
To the planet.
to the planet. It's the relationship we have. And I, for one, don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that. I get scared and I get worried. And this whole week about, oh my God, what if we have COVID? And then what? But sometimes in situations like that, it makes me want to be a better woman. It makes me want to be a better human. And I think that doesn't mean that I have to be, give away anything or be overly generous. It just means that I need to have more compassion. And, so much of everything that we say and do is based in fear. It's extraordinary to me.
And fear and shame. Those are some of the most toxic emotions.
Absolutely.
And that's really what causes so much, all the emotional toxicity and non-acceptance, is look what it's doing to us.
Yeah.
So I guess let's keep talking, let's keep connecting, let's keep remembering we are all human beings and we are all sweet animals and we are all of that. So Shay and I want to
Yay. Puna's Shanam.
So thank you all. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Karen.
And
Nice to meet you,
Thank you.
Carrie.
Nice to meet you.
Just please, if you listeners out there, reach out also. We really are all one. And until we start remembering that and acting on that, our planet, our existence is now at stake. So not to just, leave on a sour note, but I do have hope because there is good and beauty and caring in all of us. So let's peel away those layers and find it. Okay. Thanks everybody for
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen. You look
Thanks.
beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Have a great day, everybody.
today.
Thank you.
Bye.